Hey everybody, welcome to the Quick Draw. It's me, Mike, with my co-host John. We are missing our guest today. Unfortunately, Eric had a bit of a last-minute emergency to take care of. So we won't be talking our planned topic today, but we will open up the live chat for anyone who wants to ask us ridiculous questions or give us a topic to talk about, or both. So the live chat is open. We're going to regret this, aren't we, John? Again.
Oh, I'm sure, but then again, that depends. If you talk gaming, you can't go wrong with gaming. I mean, come on. Well,
we will just roll with it. In the meantime, what have you been doing this week, John?
what did I do? Oh God,
Yeah.
same thing I've been doing for the last 6 months, which was. But other
Are
than
you
that,
still moving?
yeah. Well, no. You know what? My mom is okay. That's how that goes. that's a task that takes forever and ever and always. But other than that, I guess I'm happy about the fact that like a couple of weeks ago I found a really cool program that lets me play Android apps on my laptop.
Oh, what is that called? BlueStacks or something like
Yes,
that?
I love BlueStacks. It's awesome. I'm
That's a
happy with it.
Google emulator.
Yeah, it's really great. I was gonna say I get to play like I started playing Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. That's a really addictive game.
I'm not a fan of.
Mobile games.
Mm,
I like a few because I've been playing Final Fantasy Brave
that
Exvius.
whole business model is
Freemium
um,
games.
what?
Premium games.
Well, yeah, the whole model is pay to win
Oh well, some games yes. Like for instance, there was what was the game?
or get bombarded with ads. It's like pay to
Uh,
win or get bombarded with ads.
so there was Marvel Avengers Alliance, which was a fun game, but a lot of the good stuff you could get in it was in the PvP. But because you could just pay money to do just about speed up everything to get better equipment, then it was just really crappy uh, for that sort of thing. The PvP just sucked for that reason. But like,
See, I actually do want to do. I wanted to write a thread sometime this week to do to actually talk about video games, like the
mm,
industry, because I like video games. I enjoy video games.
mm,
The problem I have with video games is they're not good anymore. I think there's like an inverse correlation between how pretty the graphics are
yeah,
or
I mean,
generationally, and then how like shitty the storytelling and
right.
everything is.
Well,
So.
see, here's the thing. I find that if you want to find games that are still good, you almost have to go indie. This is why I've almost, outside of me still playing my PS3 games and stuff, I basically am Steam is pretty much my go-to for everything when it comes to gaming. Or I play old stuff. I emulate old systems. And I'm playing Legend of Legaia on my PS1. I haven't played that in years, so I decided to pick it up again. I don't know if you know that game, but
Doesn't sound fair. I was gonna write I actually want to write a review about the Dead Space series and the Witcher series because those by far for like the next gen stuff are some of the best games that I've ever. Dead Space. Have you played that at all?
I have a friend who's played it, so I've watched him
Okay. So
play.
yeah, it's a fucking like shit your pants scary. It's really good.
Really? Yeah,
Yes, like the
I think
first,
I
they get progressively less. They get more actiony and less horror based um, throughout the series, which makes kind of sense because
used to.
as you're progressing along, well, you're following this one character,
Right.
and you figure after the second or third game, he's kind of used to this shit.
Yeah.
So the first game, though, like I couldn't play for more than 30 minutes straight at a time.
Yeah.
After like 30 minutes, I'm just like, oh my god, I'm like.
Oh yeah. My nerves are easily frazzled in certain games. Like I remember when I first played BioShock, and like I just kind of like it racks my nerves a little bit. So like I tend to just be like, okay, I need to stop for a while. I'll pick it up again in like an hour or two. But
So
you
this
know,
is a good question. So this is a good question we got. How did you and John meet and become friends? That's actually kind of funny. So John and I met on Facebook. I was actually uh, pseudonymous at the time. I was operating under a sock account called Damocles Aurelius. And I was doing a bit of a social experiment. I used to debate, before I got really into politics and debating liberals and arguing with liberals online, I did a lot of religious debate with evangelical conservatives, with Catholics, with Jews, whatever, whatever, atheists. And what I found, and it was really frustrating, is people who would lose debates to me, as they always do, because I don't lose. People that would debate me and get their ass handed to them would get really upset. They'd go to my account, which I didn't keep very secure. I mean, you couldn't. I kept it somewhat locked up, but you could still see like where I went to school and like what church I belonged to. And so people would look at that and say, "Oh, you believe blah blah blah. Of course you're saying this. Blah. I'm not going to talk to you anymore." Like that was how a lot of people would just back out of the argument. So I decided to do a little experiment. And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna pretend to be this anonymous account, and I'm going to not give any identifiers as far as what I believe, as far as my race, age. Like I hid all of that." And what I found was that people would actually argue with me on merit when I forced them to, by not giving them any personal information that they could then say, "Oh, well, I'm just going to dismiss you out of hand." So John and I tend to circle in the same groups, and because we're both members of faiths that are considered heterodox,
I was gonna say out to the margins, I guess.
yeah, we're both belong to somewhat marginalized Christian faiths. That's a good way to put it. We always ended up on the same side of the debate, and John and I have our brains work very similarly. So we ended up getting along, and then Rami ran. And John, you were the first person I unmasked to, too. Like, John was the first person, like, that I said, "By the way, this is my real identity. This is who I am. You can follow my personal account." It was John and one other person.
I actually knew you when you were a bachelor, which is funny.
Yeah, I've actually known John
briefly, but
about as long as I've known my wife, which is kind of weird.
And yet she doesn't consider me competition, which is great.
No. That's. There's a reason why she doesn't consider you competition, but.
Because I'm black, isn't it?
No. Just because she knows nobody can compete with her.
Fair enough. I'll give her that.
So that's how we met, and then I don't know. We were always on the same side of the debate. We were always arguing together, and we'd always tag team each other. That doesn't come out right.
Phrasing.
I need to rephrase that. Or roll that back. No, we would. But and then when Romney ran, all the religious conversations became wildly political. Right. So then we just started doing political stuff together, and then after that, we were just like, you know what? And we both would write stuff. Yeah, we would both write stuff, and people were like, "Man, we really like your writing." But we didn't want to add strangers to our accounts, like willy-nilly, because those were our personal accounts. So we created the Ornery Young Guns page so that we could just write whatever we wanted, and then people could go to that and read, our occasional political rant.
Yep.
So, and then it just kind of morphed into what it is today. It's been almost 10 years. Holy shit.
I know, right?
That's a good question, though, Gray Wolves. Thanks for asking that.
And you know what? And I'm running over here like I'm gonna go look at the live chat too. But no, I don't want my browser to crash. It's done that before, where they're like, "Yeah, let's read the live chat," and then everything crashes because my computer is sticky. Computer's really reliable, honestly.
Yeah, and for those of you that are just joining us, our guest did cancel today. He had an emergency come up, so when that happens, we usually just free for all it. We let. You guys are welcome to ask any question you want. We will try to answer it as best we can. We'll talk about any topic you want. Go for it. The sky's the limit. As long as you're not asking us to magic mic the show, we're good.
Oh dear God, no!
You don't want to see that with John. It's now maybe if we get a few drinks in him, you might see it.
Oh
anyway,
God!
But.
Don't remind people of that. You know what? Well, you know what though. Okay, I'll tell you what. Drink.
Why haven't y'all fixed my broadband? I don't know how to answer that one.
Wait, what?
So he wrote, "Why haven't y'all fixed my broadband?" It's like,
go
wireless, man. That's
Yeah, I was gonna,
Ditching. I'll tell you what. Ditching Comcast was the best thing I ever did. I honest to God hate them so much.
I think everybody does. Uh, I don't think anybody actually likes Comcast. They just don't.
That's a funny, and I mean that's really the funny thing too about like the whole net neutrality thing that people didn't seem to realize is like Comcast supports it, and they're like Comcast loves net neutrality. Why would you like anything that Comcast likes? That would be good enough reason.
It kills off every bit of competition that they would have.
Well, and that's the thing. People like Comcast has a monopoly. Like, do you know how Comcast has a monopoly? It's the government. Like I used to work in telecom sales. Okay, so that's why I find the question kind of funny. I used to work in telecom sales, and one of the most annoying things ever was I'd have a customer come in, and we'd have cell phone packages, and we'd have wireless home phone packages that we could offer to customers who wanted to cut the cord. Well, there were municipalities where they could sign up, they could join us, but they couldn't keep their number because the municipality had arranged something with the company that owned that number that basically said they couldn't port it out. And it would get so frustrating because people who actually, like, in this day and age, if you have a home phone, the only reason you have a home phone is because you've had that phone number for like 30 years and you don't want to give it up. Like, that's the only reason people keep a home phone, period. And yeah, it's the most annoying thing in the world when you want to sell something and you can't because the government literally makes it illegal for you to compete with that number. Now, you can compete with another number, but nobody's going to switch. Nobody does that.
Right.
So,
especially unless there's some really big change that happens as a result.
What? So why did my personal both? Oh, okay. Did you want to say something, John? Before I go to the next question.
What was it?
If both of you have one piece of advice, what would it be?
To who?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the person, I guess. Broad advice, I would say don't take yourself too seriously. Like, you know, you're never so important or so smart or so successful that you can't be led by the nose. You know, so you can always learn something from someone. So don't ever take yourself too seriously. That's like my advice. I don't always follow it, but
I guess in my case, it's kind of more of a, I don't know, because I'm like a very cost benefit kind of guy. So it's like, don't do things like that aren't, I don't want to say like aren't necessary, but just like, you know, try to always determine in anything you do just what is actually necessary. Because I find that, and also be aware of what it takes to do a certain thing you want to do. So like for instance, people used to tell me, you know, like for instance, the idea that everyone's supposed to go to college. If you really give thought to what you want to do, you'll realize sometimes that depending on what you want to do, it's not necessary. So like, you know, always be very well aware of that. If you want to do something, be very specific about understanding it. You know, like how many arguments do we have nowadays where people say something and they really don't even understand exactly what the implications are of what they're saying. You know, that if you understood the implications, you'd realize what you said didn't make sense, or like that. So always really think about, follow things to their logical conclusion. That may be a short way.
Okay, so why did my personal account get suspended? Well, that is a great and tragic story. So there was a friend of mine, Melicon, which you probably know who she is. She's
awesome.
She's awesome. She's done some really great rants and threads on Twitter. She was getting harassed by a stolen valor asshole who we also think was the sock account for a stalker of another account. We're not entirely sure. And I was able to get one of their accounts suspended because they were being racist assholes. And I might have made the mistake of mentioning to the people that were getting harassed and stalked, like, look, these accounts are doing X, Y, Z. If you want to get them shut down, just go look for their racist stuff, report their racist stuff. Because Twitter doesn't care about harassment. The thing you have to understand about Twitter's TOS, I know I'm getting off a little bit of a tangent here, but it's kind of interesting. Their TOS is actually very arcane. It's very subjective. And there's actually a clause in the TOS that says we can suspend you for any bullshit reason we want, and you can't do anything about it. Now, if they, one might ask, if they can do that, why haven't they suspended every conservative account online? Well, because there's this little thing called Section 230 in the Telecommunications Act, which basically says that if you are an internet forum, if you're an app or social media or whatever, you provide a venue on the internet, right? You have a choice. You can be a private entity and exercise all the rights that a private entity is entitled to. Rights of association, rights of free speech, the right to deny or provide service to anyone you want. But if you do that, you waive your Section 230 protections, which basically says that you can be held liable for any illegal activity that goes on your website. Right. So Twitter and Facebook use, because they're social media apps and because there's all kinds of transactions and goings on that are very difficult to regulate and very difficult to monitor, they file for Section 230 protection, which basically says, look, if there's pedophilia going on your website, you're not accountable for it because because you're a public forum, you give access to everyone, and you make sure that nobody is weeded out because you want to be politically neutral or because you want there to be conversations. And again, I don't know all the nuances and ins or outs of this law, but that's kind of that's my understanding of it. Is basically you can either be a public forum, like you can basically be a public square on the internet, and anything goes, and you're not liable, but then you have to be politically neutral.
So for someone who's a Ben Shapiro addict, but he basically said it's the difference between being a platform and a publisher. So as a platform, it means you have absolutely no say in what goes on your platform, but in exchange, you're not liable for anything. That means,
right.
If it's illegal, it's copyright, whatever. It doesn't matter. If you're a platform, you're liable for nothing. But the minute you start curating the content, you become a publisher. At that point, you are liable for things that are illegal and whatever other things are on there.
Right.
And I think that's the shit that Facebook just stepped in, that Zuckerberg stepped in his little thing up on Capitol Hill.
Oh yeah.
Kind of stepped in the shit by saying they're a publisher, and it's like, oh.
What's up, Mark? That was a bit of a tangent, but I wanted to give some context. That's why Twitter just doesn't go around banning people. Now, what Twitter does do is, if some asshole who wants to harass you or give you a hard time wants to go through your account and look for things that they can then report to Twitter, Twitter has set up algorithms and bot trackers and things of that nature that will, if enough people report you or enough accounts report you, and this is where it gets really shady and shitty, if enough accounts report you and you are small enough, or even if you're a pretty big account, if the right trigger words that an algorithm can pick out show up in that tweet, then you get suspended. You can actually get auto banned. If you get suspended, now they've set it up too, where if you get suspended enough times, it gets progressively worse each time they put you in a timeout, and then eventually they just ban you for no reason. They just say, "Oh, we're going to ban you." So what happened is, I pissed off a Nazi or an alt-right or a black pillar. I don't know who I pissed off, but I pissed off somebody who was harassing friends of mine, and they went through my account. They looked for whatever they could find, and they reported it, and they got me suspended. Well, because I'm conservative, it doesn't matter that I was the victim of targeted harassment or reporting abuse. Twitter doesn't like my account. They're not going to reinstate it. And it's funny. They've actually changed the reasons multiple times. The first time they did it, they accused me of targeted harassment. They said I was engaged in targeted harassment and abuse, and I was like, "That's bullshit. I've never harassed anyone in my life." Then they changed it to, they said multiple violations of the TOS, and I was like, okay, that's actually contrary to your stated policy of being more transparent and more direct about and showing people why they're getting suspended. So then they changed it again, and this is over the course of multiple appeals, dozens of appeals. Like I was appealing every day for like 3 months, and then I would do it every now. After that, I would do it like every week, and then I just got fed up and said, "Screw it, I'm done with Twitter."
Surely not.
Shh. And then they changed it again to hate speech. Apparently, I'm guilty of hate speech and promoting violence, which again is bullshit. And they won't provide the tweets. They won't say anything like, "Well, here's multiple examples of where you engaged in hate speech or promoting violence. Here's multiple examples where you targeted harassment." They don't give you the option to delete. They don't give you the option to make amends if you're conservative. Now, if you're a liberal, you can threaten to kill the POTUS or say vile things to Republicans who survive getting shot at. Like they don't give two shits what you do if you're liberal, which is why I say we should just whip out Section 230 and use it as a bludgeon. That's one instance where I'm actually okay. As a small government guy, I'm absolutely okay with the government stepping in and saying, no, actually, you have to behave when it comes to the way you treat your users, because otherwise, we're going to nail you to the wall for providing pornographic access. Because one of the things that Twitter could get in a lot of trouble for is the fact that they have pornography, but Twitter is rated, you can get access to Twitter if you're 13. So Twitter makes it so that minors can access pornography, which is illegal. That is trafficking pornography to a minor. They don't have the protections that a porn site will have. Usually when you go to a porn site, one of the things, or so I'm told, one of the things you do when you go to a porn site is they usually will make you click a box that says, "I acknowledge I am 18." Or there's some message there that says, you being here on this site, you acknowledge that you are above 18, that you are legally allowed to consume pornography in all its forms. Twitter doesn't do that. So that I've seen. So I have a feeling if the government wanted to crack down on them for that, and that may be why you saw like a big purge of conservative accounts recently, and now you haven't really seen anything. I think this thing with Zuckerberg has got the executive management at Twitter a little nervous, because Twitter would be the next logical target of a government inquisition.
You have to keep in mind that I think I have to believe that Zuckerberg at this point is kind of aware of what he said during that thing on Capitol Hill. I think at this point he's aware. He is open, because again, just on like copyright infringements alone, Facebook there'd be so many counts of it. And I think they said each violation is like $30,000, but consider how many millions to tens of millions of violations that they would probably have on Facebook. That alone, if you start curating content and you claim you're a publisher, you're liable for all of them. They would bankrupt themselves in short order if every person who had intellectual property that was improperly used or not credited to them decided to sue Facebook. Facebook would go bankrupt pretty fast. I mean, so I think they're aware they stepped in it, and they're trying to find. I think what they're trying to do is find a way to continue to curate content without curating content. I think that's like in Twitter.
Well, now this is where it gets interesting. I actually wrote a thread about this today. If you go to the group account, and at ornery_opinions, there's the most recent thread is actually about. So a lot of people, Twitter's done something. They're doing something behind the scenes with their code, and it's causing a lot of frustration. I keep seeing people in my feed being like, "Am I shadow banned? Am I shadow banned? Am I shadow banned?" It's like, no, you're not shadow banned. It's just that Twitter's run by morons. And and it's kind of funny when you think about it, because Twitter, we know, is a left-wing company. That's why people get so paranoid about getting shadow banned if you're conservative, and that's not entirely irrational, right? We know that if they can do it, they probably would do with it as much as they could get away with it, right?
Well, there we are.
But there's another aspect to leftism that I discuss in the thread that is actually more problematic, and that's Dunning-Kruger. The problem with left-wing ideology is that it appeals primarily to people who are not intelligent but wish they were, or not moral but wish they were virtuous. Like that's what left-wing ideology appeals to. It appeals to very stupid people who think they're brilliant and very immoral people that think they're righteous. And so you have this left-wing company populated by left-wing people who think that their view of the world is right. And so they, if I'm running a social media app, right, my only concern is making money. My concern would only be making the user interface friendly, making it easy for people to engage and see each other's content, making it incentivizing content creation, because the whole business model of Twitter and social media is eyeballs, right? You users, us, we the user, we create content, we engage each other, we make Twitter addicting, right? So that our eyeballs are constantly fixated on the app, and we entertain each other. That's what social media is supposed to do. We're supposed to entertain each other for free. In return, we get bombarded with advertising, right? And so advertisers will pay for space on online media apps. So if I'm running the app because I'm a conservative and I don't really give a shit about policing people's ideas, I'm just creating something that's user friendly, that promotes content creation, and simultaneously monetizes your guys' effort to entertain yourselves. If I'm a liberal, I think it's actually more important that I'm making sure that your entertainment has what I deem to be socially valuable. And so now it's really complicated making an app. That's why people talk about, why can't we just make a conservative Twitter? It's not that easy. Like, it's actually pretty complicated. And if you want to see how bad it can turn out, look at Black Twitter called Blitter. All right, it was horrible. It was so buggy we couldn't even troll it properly because it would just fail on us. Like John and myself and another friend of mine, and Miss Pinky, if you guys saw our Miss Pinky episode, she is a hoot, and we the four of us were on this website trying to troll people, and we couldn't because it kept crashing and tweets weren't getting posted, and it was just bad. I'm sorry, they call them bleats, which just makes you sound like a sheep. Meh.
That clearly did not get through the focus group.
Yeah, so it's not exactly an easy thing. But when you add on top of that, like trying to monitor people's words and dots and how they present themselves, it just becomes a monumental clusterfuck. And so what happens is you get people who they're more, because of their desire to be virtuous, they're more concerned with policing you than they are with making an app that works. And then on top of that, they think they know how to make an app work, but they really don't. They're kind of stupid. So it's just where things get buggy. But social media is shady as fuck. Well, if I say this all the time, follow Ad Contrarian. Find AD Contrarian. He is a marketing exec. I think he owns his own marketing company. Brilliant guy. I don't always agree with his politics, but he talks about the data, he talks about the fraud, he talks about the waste. And if you didn't know this, there's some scary things that I didn't know until I started following this guy and reading his blog. But, it used to be a lot of the stuff on YouTube and Twitter funded things like terrorism and sex trafficking rings. Not directly. It's just that these organizations would pay for ad space. There would be, Hamas had its own YouTube channel and they monetized it, and then Hyundai was paying for ad space. So Hyundai ads were going on Hamas YouTube space, and it was a very bad image if you were a company trying to not be associated with terrorism.
Well, and like I said, I think the shadow banning also is a means by which to skirt the edge of this idea that they're curating content by saying, "I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't curate anything." I think they're trying to split the difference between who can see it and whether it's still there. So, if someone were to say, "Well, you're curating content because people can't see it," they can say, "Well, no. We didn't change the content. The content's still there. Just not as many people saw it. And plus, can you really prove that anyone is being shadow banned? That's the other thing. I noticed that there are like apps to try to check.
I don't know how effective they are. I mean, I
Right,
think
I think
if it says you're
effectiveness.
not shadow banned, then you can take that as a guarantee that you're not. But I don't think you can take it as a guarantee if it says you might be.
Right, but that's the point. It's the very fact that you can't tell that I think tells me that it's hard to prove, and I think that's the point. The idea is so that you can't prove it. They can say, "What are you talking about? We didn't curate content. We didn't do anything." And it's like, "Well, you shadow
Right.
banned me," and they'll just say, "We didn't do anything. What are you talking about? Prove it. What are you saying?" And I think the fact that it's so hard to prove is exactly what they're doing. Shadow banning works when, because I noticed that this uh, spree of just like literally closing down conservative accounts is starting to peter out. But I think that's why. I don't think they're just closing them down now because they realize that would be curating content. If you just
Right.
shadow ban,
That's what I was kind of hinting at earlier. Is
right,
that if they are shadow banning people instead of outright banning them,
right,
that's wise because
yeah,
Zuckerberg just got his ass handed to him by Congress.
right. And I think that's telling because, and also the other thing to keep in mind is leftists
But
are.
Share up in the chat brings up a good point too.
Oh,
Twitter claims they do not shadow ban, and believe it or not, I actually believe them on this. I don't think it's a thing where they go into your account and they muck with it so that you don't show up. I think what they do sometimes is they play with algorithms, and that algorithms are really tricky things to figure out. Like there's a value in an algorithm when you're dealing with like word searches or search engines or social media. It's called an eigenvalue. And what that is you are, if you have a matrix of numbers, right, or values, it doesn't necessarily be a number, it could be a word, it could be a color, whatever. Okay, an eigenvalue is a value that is one part removed from one of the values in that matrix, and it would be one part removed up or down, whatever that ends up meaning. So, and the way algorithms will work is if you search for something, let's say you type in, am I shadow banned? Well, then like Google will say, am I shadow banned? And then it'll look up that exact value, and then it'll look up any value, any eigenvalue up or down of that phrase, of each individual word, and then it assigns a value to it, a mathematical value that the computer can then spit out. And then that's how you're able to find things so efficiently. If you know how to do a search, you can actually find things very effectively online. And it's also why if your search is too specific, you can actually not find anything. So they're very complicated. It's linear algebra. It's somewhat complicated math, and it's easy to fuck up. That's the thing. Like even if you know what you're doing, it's really easy to fuck up. And as I mentioned earlier, I honestly think it's just Twitter employees are stupid. Like you have to be a moron to buy into liberalism, to buy into modern liberalism. So you may have a degree in computer science. I'm not saying you're a complete and utter drooling buffoon that you can't like get through college and get a computer science degree. What I am saying is, especially with the state of American education being the way it is, like I went through college, right? My degree is in mechanical engineering. I am not persuaded that the vast majority of people that go to college are actually that smart. I think there's a lot
right.
of I think there's a lot of educated idiots in the world
There are
today.
lots of them actually.
There's just and I'm one of them. I'll cop to it. Like I have a degree, but
Thomas Sowell would agree with you there. And I was going to say another thing that's very important to know is that, like you said, well, you pointed out that leftists are willing to a great degree to lose money in order to make a value judgment. And
yeah,
actually, this is something Glenn Beck mentioned years ago, and I think he's right because this is especially true in Hollywood. Notice that a lot of the movies that like bomb at the box office and don't do well, but they keep making them anyway. And those are the ones that win all the awards. So like almost all the movies that win awards are movies that, for the most part, nobody actually sees. Because I
yeah,
think that when we talk about like the Screen Actors Guild circle jerk, I think that's basically about right. Is that it's basically that it's not about so much, and I'm not saying it's not about the money at all, But I think for many of them, money
I
is
think at some point you have enough money. Like
right.
if I was making 7 figures or 8 figures a movie,
I can afford to lose a little.
I can, yeah. What do you got to It's
Right,
funny though because the most politically active actors seem to be the shittiest ones.
right. Well,
Like
not only
that's how you
that,
can tell when somebody's career is in the shitters when they start getting politically active. Like, oh, you can't get a movie role because
right,
you're plucking away for
especially if you're
abortion or taking away
right.
my gun rights.
Well, the thing is that Glenn Beck, he was talking at the time about how if you go to like conservatives with a lot of money, like people that are like very conservative, they're very much about the ROI. If you can't tell them how much is the return, like I suppose that's the double edged sword to being the people who actually understand how economics work. Is that
We don't
we
waste
tend to be
money on
yeah
stupid
we're
things.
very cautious about wasting money, and movies by far are the one of the riskiest things to put money into because you really don't know if you're getting it back, and there's not really a reliable way to know. And so that being the case, a lot of conservatives who are very, very frugal, especially rich conservatives, they're not going to put money into a movie because the risk is very high. Whereas leftists don't mind; they'll lose money if it means I want to get a movie out there with a message that I want, and if I lose money, no big deal. They'll lose some money, and
That's
he
like
was
that's an exercise in narcissism right there. It's like
right,
I'm gonna flush millions of dollars down the toilet, but if it makes me feel validated, then I don't
right,
care.
right. Well, and I think
Like
that's I think
that is like textbook narcissism right there.
But I think that is also textbook leftism. I think leftism, stripped of
So yeah, same
everything,
difference.
stripped of all philosophy, is all about self-aggrandizement. It's about making yourself feel good about yourself. What is that phrase? The endless struggle to think well of yourself. I think that's all it is.
Well, that's why I say it. That's why I say like leftism appeals to people who are intellectually vacuous,
Right,
but they want to feel smart.
right,
These are people that want to be geniuses, but they don't want to put the time and the effort into being an actual smart person.
right.
These are people that want to be virtuous, but they don't want to put the time and the effort actually doing virtue and
No,
doing
they want
good
to make you
deeds and
do it.
being moral people because that requires way too much fucking discipline.
Nope. The easier way to do it is for them to instead and this is why I think the left has a lot of focus on redefining words, because what they're aiming to do is instead of doing things to be more moral, they redefine morality to make themselves moral without doing anything. They simply say, okay, we're going to redefine morality to make you the moral viper and me the angel without me doing anything different or you doing anything different. It's just I've now redefined it. So now you're a viper. What did you do? Nothing. We just redefined the terms. You redefine. That's why you have things like the word racist constantly gets redefined because it has to be. So that way, leftists can continue to claim we're morally superior because we're anti-racist. What does racism mean? Whatever they want it to mean at any given moment.
Things I don't like.
Right, and like not like Nazi, not Nazi. They say I had a friend unfriend me, and he's a guy that I genuinely liked. He was a leftist, but I genuinely liked the guy. He was a nice guy. I worked with him for a while, and he unfriended me because he said you can't dare tell me that Antifa is evil. It's right in the name. They're anti-fascist, and I was like, okay, what's their definition?
So German was trying to explain to me on Twitter how uh, Germans are not fascist for throwing fascists in jail simply for being fascist. And I'm like, and he's like, you need a lesson in logic. And I'm like, trust me, I think I do because this is not computing.
Right. That's the thing. But when I asked my friend, I said, well, okay, what's their definition of fascist? He just unfriended me because it's like you're not. He said, I will not accept any criticism of them whatsoever. And I said, okay, but the definition of fascist is so wide you could drive a truck through it. So the reality is, anyone qualifies as a fascist in their mind. And I was like, so their being anti-fascist doesn't mean anything. But in his mind, as long as they say they're anti-fascist, he figures, okay, well then they're above reproach. And that's what I mean.
So speaking of racism, did you see the thing with Starbucks?
Yes, I did. In particular, two things. I saw Sargon of Akkad's video on that issue, and not to mention, I started following the guy who did this, Hotep Jesus. You know him?
I've seen him around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see his troll of Starbucks after this, where he just basically goes in there and says, "I heard you guys are racist, so I want free coffee as a representative."
Oh, I did see that. That was hilarious.
What's more hilarious is they did it. I'm just like,
Yes.
surely they're not going to actually do that, and they did. And I'm just like, really? And like Sargon pointed out, that's really how bigoted leftists are, because what they're basically saying is, because they're condescending. Their form of bigotry is one of condescension. Because we at no point want to believe you're capable of doing anything. That oh my God, you poor thing, here's a free coffee, because it's not like you could afford it on your own. If a conservative said anything like that, we'd be like, drawn and quartered for it. But the reality is that if a leftist says it, oh well, that's because he's just compassionate towards. No, because he's a condescending prick who thinks I can't do anything. And that's what he was because that's what he did. That's what Hotep Jesus was showing, is that that's what these people think. They're just a helpless.
Yeah, somebody pointed out I retweeted it on the group account, and it was a really good point. I was kind of mad at myself for not thinking of it sooner. But you remember when Starbucks like refused to let cops because they had guns?
Right.
Yeah. And it was like nobody asked them to take sensitivity training for police officers, like how we need to be more supportive of the police officers.
Of course not, because police are racist to shoot black people for wearing hoodies. Except, like I've said before, it doesn't happen anywhere I've ever lived, which leads me to think that there is not enough funding for their Blacks Are Animals program. I would like to
Cheer brings up a good point. I don't understand how people put up with that attitude. I don't either. Like, seriously, if somebody talks down to me, I don't care if they're my boss. I don't care who they are. I just give them a death stare if they're my boss. Right. And if they're not cutting my checks, then oh boy, do I give them shit. Like that's
why I love Mrs. Pinky though, because she feels my pain. She knows this. Because there's nothing worse. She feels it, because it is so irritating to be told, it's like I was telling, was it Chad Felix Green? This guy, he's great. He's I think he's gay, but yeah, he's really cool. And he was talking about, he made a thing where he said, "Did you just question because someone was insulting Candace Owens? It was Perez Hilton." And so he says, like, did you just question the lived experiences of a woman of color? And I said, it's almost as though woman of color only matters if she believes what a white leftist tells her to believe. And I was like, because that's exactly what it is. I was like, the whole woman of color shtick doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean anything. All it means is, as long as you believe what I tell you to believe, then woman of color means something. But the minute you stop doing that, the whole shit goes
this happened. Okay, so this happened to my wife. So my wife's a makeup artist, right? She's a licensed esthetician. Side note: one of my biggest pet peeves of the beauty community is they spell esthetician wrong. Seriously, they spell it. They spell EST esthetician. It's AES, like it's as in aesthetics, and they all spell it wrong. And my wife's like, and I give my wife a pass because English is not her first language. So when she speaks it, I correct her gently. But anytime anyone else says it, I'm like, it's AE, you morons! You're killing the English language. You're killing me here. Like, it's just so bad.
But
all right, so Grey Wolves asks, what do y'all think about Jesse Kelly's idea that the nation needs a peaceful divorce? I disagree, for reasons that might surprise you. Here's the problem with his there's a few problems that I have with it. One, I'm very averse to the idea of splitting the nation, especially if it means giving valuable resources to people that are the reason why we need the divorce. To me, I feel like you're submitting to the enemy, and I don't like that. So no, I don't want a peaceful divorce because I don't think they deserve it. They get nothing. I'm the belligerent ex-spouse that when I get asked for a divorce, like, you get nothing. Fuck you. So that's one of the reasons I kind of disagree with it. The other reason I disagree with it is, I mean, he's right in his analysis. I absolutely think he is he's absolutely right in his analysis of how we are two separate nations. There's no getting along. John and I have said that for years. Like you cannot be bipartisan. We talk about bipartisanship like it's a virtue. Bipartisanship is only a virtue if you are built on the same values. Okay, the left and the right are not built on the same values. Right, the left eschews the Declaration of Independence. They want nothing to do with it. They think it's an obsolete document written by a bunch of slave owners. They don't believe it in, you know, the fact that we're created or created equally or that we have inalienable rights. They think rights come from government. They think that the majority should rule, that technocrats should rule. And so there's no, you can't, if the fight is between slavery and liberty, you cannot compromise between the two without liberty yielding. Slavery doesn't give anything up when liberty compromises. That's the thing, right? That's why progressivism over the last 100 years has been able to make the gains that it makes, because we keep buying into this lie that you can compromise and still get something from slavery. You can't. When you give something up to slavery, all it does is make you a little bit more of a slave. It doesn't make the slave more free.
Right.
So he's absolutely right in his analysis, but I think he's wrong in what he's calling for.
Although I do think on the level of states, it is useful. Like California wanting to split, I'm actually not against that. Now, the idea of it seceding, I am, but the idea of it splitting into 3 states, I think actually makes some sense. Now, again, it's not the most ideal outcome, but it's been done before. And
that being said, like, if California wants to secede, fuck them, they can go. I don't care.
But I mean, if California splits, and I'm not saying this just because it would make it would just be a kick in the nuts to the Democrats, because it would be, but also just because I care about the people who live there that don't want to be ruled by tyrants who live in
yeah, but they could come live with us. Like that's
but well, that's why. Okay, let me give a random 2 people who I consider almost like my idols, but I have to ask honestly. Both Thomas Sowell and Ben Shapiro admit California sucks. Yet they are still there. They're still there. I don't understand that. I don't get it.
Yeah, I've actually I don't get it either, because I've actually passed up work. Like I had job offers in California, and I was like, oh no, sorry.
No, I would never want to live there. I don't understand how any. And again, it's not like Shapiro or Sowell are like California conservatives. They are conservatives. Why are you still there? Why don't you just leave?
Well, to be fair, like one, they probably make enough money to where they can live there comfortably.
I guess so.
And I think the thing about liberals is they're very status oriented. Like if they don't know who you are and they don't know your politics, but you fit in their kind of social strata, they'll be nice to you.
Like they're like the Borg in that respect. Actually, they're like the Borg in every respect.
Yeah, like liberals are nice people up until they know your political beliefs. Then it gets a little ugly. Right. But if you are in their social strata and they don't know who you are, or you don't bump into them on a regular basis, they leave you alone.
Right.
But yeah, I couldn't live.
Right, I couldn't either. I had a cousin who lived in Berkeley. He said he used to like go to the CPUSA meetings just to laugh at the communists. But but I don't know how he lived there all that time. Like honestly,
I have a feeling both of them would make the argument. And I don't think it's an invalid argument. It's not an argument I'm willing to live by. I think they would make the argument, though, that somebody has to be Daniel in the lion's den.
Yeah, that's what my mom said.
Somebody has to do that.
Yeah.
And you know, and in a way, you and I used to be that on Facebook. Like we used to be the guys that would go in and we'd tear shit up online, and you know, people would ask us to argue for them and say, hey, I'm having this debate with so-and-so. Can you give me some pointers? It gets frustrating. It gets frustrating after a while because you're like, I don't feel like I'm making a difference. I feel like I'm saying the same things over and over and over and over and over and over again.
It turned out that wasn't true. But the other thing is, we did learn that one rule, however. All, without exception, political groups on Facebook
suck.
they go insane eventually. Because I
They
noticed
suck.
so many of them started off as we want to
Suck.
be a forum
It's
for
just a big
people to
wall of
have
suck.
political. Yeah, they want to have political arguments. We want everyone to be involved, and eventually one side takes over. Eventually, because there was
And it's
like
never healthy. It doesn't matter who takes over. It's never healthy.
right, exactly.
It
So
does not matter. It could be the
doesn't matter.
conservatives win, and they're like the asshole
But they're
conservatives.
crazy ones, and so like well
Yeah.
because you had political Animal House, the leftists I think took over that one, but then you had what is it? I think it's like Truth in Politics. That one turned completely went to the right. Like they all
But they
just
don't allow. The problem is whoever is in control doesn't allow for any kind of like dissent. That's
right,
where like,
right, and
and
that
if you're a conservative, even if you're on the same side and you're like, well, I actually have a different view on this.
right.
Well,
No,
now
they
you
base
now
your
you become a heretic. I can't tell you how many times I've been called a liberal by people. I'm like,
yeah. It's usually when it was
do you know
followed
my
up with
politics?
well, yeah. Then it was
Have you
followed up
seen my
by
writing?
MAGA because apparently, God forbid you ever breathe the word of objection to Donald Trump, and you're totally lost. You
But
know, whatever
going
you
back to
want
the
to.
declaration thing, I agree with Jesse Kelly's assessment of the problem. I don't agree with his solution. I do think, and I'm actually going to be writing on this for Halsey News when I get some time. Um, the I would like to do it. I would like to take Jesse Kelly's article and dovetail off of it into an analysis of the Declaration of Independence, because I think the Declaration of Independence gives us a very good template. Um, this is something that I have written on actually. If we talk about the Constitution a lot, and we talk about how like the code is this, the code is this, the code is this, and it's like I get what people are trying to say, right? And I believe the Constitution is inspired of God. I believe it is a very important document. I revere the Constitution. Don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say here. I revere the Constitution. I love the Constitution, but the Constitution can be changed. It can be amended, and it could theoretically be amended into something that it was never intended to be.
Right.
Right. So we don't want that to be our last line of defense.
Right.
We don't even want it to be the first line of defense because it can be changed. We want it to be the thing that we look to we want it to be the thing that enforces what we look to. The Declaration of Independence, that's what we need to focus on, and that's the thing that's immutable. That's the thing that you can't alter. It's written. It's been signed. It's written. It declared us independent, and it made the case as to why, and it established the ideals and the principles that a new nation would be built on. The Constitution came after that and said, okay, we believe in the Declaration. We are now going to try our best to realize what is written in the Declaration. So I would love to sit down when I have time to actually do a kind of like a line-by-line analysis of the Declaration and compare it to Jesse Kelly's article or speak on things that I think he should have addressed and didn't. One of the things that I will address that I wish he kind of had, the Declaration makes a case at the very end. After it talks about abolishing the government and why you abolish the government and what the role of government is. It has a list of things that King George did that were like, yeah, this guy's an asshole, and that's why we're overthrowing him. That's why we're abolishing the government. I think a better approach than what Jesse wrote, and I think Jesse's not really. If I'm being honest, I don't think Jesse's actually like sincerely advocating a peaceful divorce. So much as he is making the case. I mean, he might kind of feel that way, but I think it's more about making the point of how bad things have gotten, and where the divide is and why the divide is there. And actually, people are, they're looking at that article as if it's somehow divisive, and it's not. The division's already there. He's actually saying, if anything, that would be a uniting thing. If people would actually read his article without the ideological blinders, and they just read the article, they would see this is a man who's saying, guys, we're not getting along. There's no reconciliation between us. And if people would take off the ideological blinders, they might say, you know what, he's right. We need to have more dialogue. We need to communicate. Nobody wants to do that. I would much rather go line by line through the offenses of King George and say, okay, King George did X, Y, and Z. Oh, look, our government's doing X, Y, and Z, just differently. And then also kind of analyze, like, what does the Declaration actually say as far as inalienable rights, the role of government, why government gets as bad as it gets, and then also, what do? You abolish the government. So if that would be preferable to a peaceful divorce. A peaceful divorce is never going to happen. It'll be a painful, bloody, awful divorce. If that does happen, there's not going to be a quiet secession. Nobody's going to go quietly away, because California is not going to secede while Trump is in office. They just won't. They get too much.
They can't afford to. Also,
that's right. Yeah, they can't. They really can't. I did the math. I actually did the math. They would go bankrupt very quickly.
Not to mention electorally,
their debt to revenue ratio is disgusting.
Oh, I bet the Democrats are like screaming they don't want this. I mean, the Cal 3 proposition, they're probably screaming to the high heavens that they don't want this. Democrats would get screwed royally if California split. That's 55 electoral votes down the crapper there. Because if you split the state, you know one of them is going to go red at least of the three. You know,
and that's and this is why like I'm every day I'm leaning more and more towards a con. Because I do think if things are as bad as Jesse Kelly says they are, and I think they are, then you need to abolish the government. We need to start over. Now that doesn't mean we invent whole cloth a brand new government. It means let's look at the Constitution as it was drafted, and let's look at the amendments that have been added in the last 220 years. And let's say, okay, what worked and what didn't work. Okay, the 16th Amendment, that didn't really work. The 17th Amendment, that didn't really work. Poll taxes. Well, I understand why we did poll taxes, but, we need, at the same time, I'm actually okay with disenfranchising voters who don't pay taxes at all. Like, if you need to have skin in the game. So that's what needs to happen. Is we need to abolish the government and start over. Do we do term limits or not? I don't think we do. I don't think we should do term limits. How do we fix gerrymandering? How do we, what can we put in the Constitution or what can we put in the new government that will do what the old government was supposed to do, which is enforce the ideas outlined in the Declaration of Independence. So I'll be writing about that sometime in the next couple weeks, hopefully. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, just Jesse Kelly's onto something. I don't like his solution, and I don't like it because it doesn't solve the problem. And actually, I think it concedes.
Right.
Is the co-host single? Which one?
Wait, what did you? What?
We got a question from my wife. Is the co-host single? I don't know if she's asking about me or she's asking about you.
I assume me. I mean, obviously that would be an odd question otherwise, but no, actually. So it's not complicated. It's just. But no.
Complicated is the perfect word for it. Absolutely. It's the most complicated, convoluted fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. It's complicated, trust me.
Fine.
There's no better word for that, okay?
She would have.
It was for the handsome blue-eyed one. John, you have blue eyes? that was self-deprecating humor.
Okay. I was gonna say.
All right, we got time for one final question. It doesn't have to be serious, but maybe something a little better than "Can I get your digits?"
I was gonna say, if he was asking, I would think that would probably not be.
It's like, you got my phone number, girl. You don't. What are you doing?
Probably has your phone. I mean.
No, I got my phone.
Okay, just I'm sure she doesn't go through it or anything.
Any topics, guys? Feel free to shoot us a message, DMs, if you have suggestions for guests, if you have suggestions for topics, things you'd like us to cover. We're always flexible to what we talk about, and we want to make stuff. We want to do shows that you guys are interested in watching and that deal with topics that are important to you. So if you're not going to comment here, go to the @ornery_opinions, shoot us a DM. If you want to tag someone in a tweet to us that you think would be a really good guest to get their attention, that's a great way to get them on the show, because then they can't politely decline, because you've already called them out. So feel free to do that too if you want us to bring in any guests in particular. So, but thanks guys for watching and putting up with us. We're sorry we didn't have a guest tonight. Usually we have a guest, but Eric unfortunately had to deal with a personal emergency at the last minute. So we will have him on the 12th, and we will be discussing natural laws and natural rights. It's going to be very exciting, very nerdy discussion. So next week is our Canuck friend, our other Canuck friend.
Yeah, I was going to say. I
have a lot of Canadian friends. I don't know what's up with that.
I don't have the calendar open, so
it's David. I cannot say his last name, and I'm not going to butcher it because I haven't asked him how to pronounce it yet. But @TrueCanuck1 is, I think, is
Bancarere.
I want to say Vain Queer, but I don't think he'd like that. I don't think he'd be very fond of that moniker, unless that's how he pronounces his last name. He just started a podcast. If you haven't seen it, it's today. I will try to find the name of it if you're interested in watching it. I have not seen it yet, so I don't know anything about it other than I've talked to him on Twitter. He's a really smart guy, really cool guy, very supportive of us in the program. So he obviously gets props from me.
Self-serving or anything.
So no, it's mutually beneficial. It's win-win. Exactly. So he's going to be on the show next week to talk about his show, as well as some cool topics. We'll probably throw in some Canadian politics, and then after that, we've got Hyacinth Girl. She's going to talk to us about artsy, fartsy stuff. So, and maybe some funk music. Anyway, so thanks again, guys, for participating. Thanks for being on the show. We will see you next week, and hopefully we'll see you in our DMs and in our timeline. So, take care, guys. Have a good weekend. Have a good night.